Thank you for joining us for Sit, Stay, and Sip. I'm Amanda Tillotson, the Executive Director at the Humane Animal Treatment Society. We truly appreciate your support tonight. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors for this evening. Lee and Jim Fabiano, Mike and Diane Mori, Transformations Interior Design, Muskegon Energy Company, Elena and Molly Sharma, Crakel Ford and Lincoln, Evening Star Joinery, Ross and Terry Blodgett, Tom and Cindy Reuter, Vogue Webanga and Bradley, Gretchen and Keith Pretty, Barb and Joe Barbary, Mount Pleasant Therapeutic Massage, and Mount Pleasant Heating. Now I'm going to turn it over to our panel for tonight.
Welcome everyone to this hat/brass wine tasting. My name is Phil Parr, District Manager with Great Lakes Wine and Spirits. We're going to walk you through the different wines that we have picked out for this event that people can enjoy. So thank you so much for being the panel this evening. We're going to get a little wine going to start. So this first one that we're enjoying is the Terra d'Oro Chenin Blanc Viognier. Start with get the palate going.
And we have a lovely book to follow along with.
Absolutely. So we have a little book and information about each one of the wines that we're going to be enjoying tonight. This first one, Terra d'Oro, is the first of 3 wines we're going to taste from this vineyard. So Terra d'Oro, you're thinking, oh, that's Italian. Well, it's actually from the Amador County region within California. So in the mid to late 1800s, obviously, what was the biggest thing going on in California? The gold rush. So people were moving from east to west, going to California to seek gold. And obviously you can see that little pickaxe that's on the bottle to signify it. So Terra d'Oro in Italian means land of gold. So when this vineyards were planted, they're actually planted by those settlers. People, the miners, were traveling there, and they were obviously, there's a lot of them. So there's other people like, well, we're going to set up businesses and wineries and stuff to sell to the miners. So they planted vineyards. They farmed. It's a very agriculturally rich area, and obviously, what happens in the early 1900s is prohibition. So this area becomes basically abandoned. In the late 70s, early 80s, Jeff Myers was one person that came aboard and kind of resurrected these vineyards. Some of the vines that are planted on Terra d'Oro are close to 120 years old. So obviously this wine is the Chenin Blanc Viognier blend, so the vines aren't that old. But this is a nice light blend. These are French varietals. All right, so again, cooler climate. These are actually in Clarksburg, which is a little further up into the mountains. So how's that one taste? Very nice. Excellent. Everyone thinks Chenin Blanc Viognier, they're like, yeah, a little bit more residual sugar, stuff like that. In dry style, so this is made in the old world style, so we're going to get more palate. The next one from Terra d'Oro is Pinot Grigio. So Pinot Grigio, obviously Italian varietal. Again, this is another one kind of paying homage to those Italian roots. I think domestically, one of the best Italian tasting domestic Pinot Grigio that we have to work with. I think you get a lot more of that stone fruit flavoring, more lemon zest. It's a really nice Pinot Grigio for the price. And I think it does taste a lot like the ones you have in Italy too as well. So.
I really like the first one, and I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't buy this package now.
I think you probably still can, right?
You can probably still get that. So people get confused, they see Chenin Blanc Viognier on the wine list or a wine shelf. They're like, oh, I don't know, I can't pronounce that and stuff like that. But when they taste it in the glass, you're like, oh, that sounds really nice. That's it. Most of the wines in the Loire Valley, and then some Rhone wines as well, use a lot of Chenin Blanc. Those are super popular wines around the world. So the New World versus Old World terminology, I think that's what kind of throws the American drinker off in Chenin Blanc. So we're more apt to choose the Pinot Grigio off the line. That's just the cheaper lot. So that's why this is an education series.
Right, I had never heard of it, and non-educated in my so yeah.
We're gonna get sweet for a second and finish on our last wine from the Terra d'Oro family, and it is another Italian-based varietal. This is Moscato. So I urge you, taste this wine and make sure we get a little bit of cheese and cracker and palate cleanser after this before we move on to the rest of the whites, so that you don't have all the sweeter. A little bit more residual sugar hanging out on this one, so we're gonna make sure we cleanse those palates before we move on to Rosé, Sauvignon Blanc, and Chardonnay. But if we tasted this one after those whites, or even after the reds too, you would really just taste the sugar. So you wouldn't actually pick up the different notes. So you've got a couple of tastes under your belt. We kind of call those warm-up wines. Kind of warms up the taste buds. So you'll actually be able to pick out certain flavors in this Moscato versus tasting it after.
To get that sweetness, you have to harvest the grape flavor.
Well, actually, it's they actually pick these ones when the bricks hit a certain point of ripeness. It's actually not necessarily later in the year. Kind of like what they do with Riesling. Obviously, in Michigan, when they grow their Rieslings, they let the grapes hang longer and you get the bricks of sugar up and stuff like that. Actually, they pick these kind of when they're truly ripe, and they actually, if you taste this, it's not super sweet. It's not a wine that's going to be like, wow, that's sugary sweet. I've actually had a few people say, oh, this could be sweeter. And I'm like, no, that didn't taste great to me, but
It's really pretty good.
yeah,
Is
it's
the alcohol content low like the Italian ones?
so it's not as low as those. So this is lower. It's 9.5. Like some of the Moscato d'Assis that you'll have in Italy are around 5 to 6. That's why they'll have like a nutritional label on the back of them, because they'll be under that certain ABV. It's actually counted as food. Yes. So, but I would call this a drier style Moscato, because again, it's the grapes are not, hanging on the vine for so long and getting those bricks of sugar. Really, it's actually picked in a
I love that.
cooler climate again, and then vinted like a dry style. Again, try it with some cheese and stuff like that too. Again, I know to cleanse the palate and stuff, but these wines for the summertime, these are great patio wines. Especially for the people who say, I don't like wine. This is a great one to have. All right, on to rosé. Even the patio wines together here, right? So our friends at La Crema, obviously La Crema Winery has been known for making Pinot Noir and Chardonnay for a number of years. So what they have done, obviously with their Sonoma Coast collection, they've kind of kept those wines, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay. They have a Monterey series, which they obviously moved south of San Francisco Bay and everything. Again, a little cooler climate, and they make this nice Pinot Noir rosé in Monterey. So what this does, you get the characteristics, a little bit of Pinot Noir, but the dryness of a nice sessionable rosé. So again, rosé sees a little bit of skin contact from the Pinot Noir grapes. That's how you get that color, get that nice pink, salmonish color in the glass. I was talking earlier with Lisa about the happy accident with White Zinfandel. And that was actually started with kind of Terra d'Oro, those different Zinfandel vineyards. White Zinfandel, not to get confused with rosé, that's what everyone assumed. Pink meant sweet. And in Europe and in France, it's totally different. Pink means dry. Rosés are the first wine of the season. So it's usually the first wine, white wine, blush wine, that they actually sell and export to get the kind of the cash flow coming in to pay for the other wines that they're developing in the cellar and stuff like that. So rosé has always been Oh, fresh. So you want to drink rosés typically 1 to 2 years after they've been vintage. So again, vintage on the bottle is the year that the grapes were. Okay. So it's not the year that they were put in the bottle, it's the year that the grapes were picked. And then a lot of wines now are becoming non-vintage, and we'll get into those later on in this tasting. So this is going to have a little bit more residual sugar on it, just because Pinot Noir bigger grapes, and it tends to have more grapes of sugar in it.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Why is it that you want to open your red wines and whatever, but it's not what you do?
Great question. So red wines tend to have more alcohol, and they have what they call tannins. Red wines are also usually kept in a bottle for a lot longer and stored in a barrel a lot longer. They're actually cut off from oxygen. So if you were to open a really big red wine and just drink it right away, it might feel like you're throwing a cotton ball in your mouth, and you're not picking up any flavors and stuff. So actually the wine depends, and again, this changes per wine. Wines need oxygen, because that's where when the oxygen hits the wine, it's gonna accentuate the flavors. It's actually what we call opening up the wine.
So it's both like the nemesis of wine, and you still need it.
Correct. So you don't want oxygen when it's being made, like during fermentation or during the barrel process. You want to limit, it's going to see some. They call it the reductive method. Obviously, you don't want it to see a ton of oxygen, but it does see a little bit. But that's what in bigger red wines like Bordeaux's, or even there's some Brunellos or Barolo's, really nice big reds that have been in barrel 3, 4, 5 years. They've been in the bottle for 2, 3 years. That wine hasn't seen oxygen in 7 years. So it needs oxygen. And so that you can actually taste some of the flavors that are in the wine. Because what will happen if it doesn't see enough oxygen, if you don't let it sit in your glass or decant, the wine will flow. So you won't actually be able to pick up any of the flavors. The fruits, yeah, the fruits don't come out. So, yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah. There's some whites that you want to open a little early, maybe a little Chardonnay or something like that, but generally speaking.
Something with more age.
Yeah. But generally speaking, whites, yeah, you don't have to open prior to. Yeah, so, great question.
Now, along similar lines,
Yeah.
as the single wine drinker of my household,
Yes.
how long can you store a milk bottle, and where should you store it?
All right, great question. Like the fridge. So, yes, fridge is our friend. Okay, so
For red and white?
for red and white if they're open. Okay, if you want to get more mileage out of your red. That being said, you have about 24 to 48 hours on a red wine typically that's been open. Again, I say typically because I've had wines that have been open for a week and they still taste gorgeous. Depends on it depends on how you handle it, and depends on how much actually is wine left in the bottle. So I'll grab a white one so you can see. I'll grab the rosé. So as you can see, we've poured out this much. All right. What is this part? Oxygen. Okay, so it's oxygen contact with the wine. Okay, so oxygen over time will start to oxidize this wine that's in this bottle. Now, if I close it really tight, or you can get these little vacuums that pull out a lot of the oxygen, that will allow the wine to last longer. The lower that the wine is in it, the more oxygen you have in there, the less time you have. So if you have this much left in a bottle, and you're not gonna drink it, you might as well pour it out.
Or use
give
it
it
to cook?
Give it to somebody else,
What
or,
I'm doing.
yes. But if you have like this much, if you've only taken the glass out of it and you seal it up really tight, you put it in the fridge, or you put it in a cooler, drier area with a red, you will get some, you'll get a few days off of it.
The one thing too with the reds, like if you do put it in the fridge, you will want to take it out to warm it
And warm it back
back
up
up.
to
Because you don't want to serve a glass of red wine that's been in the fridge. Because it will taste really tight, the fridge really tight.
Yeah.
And,
Well, that's why I was wondering if you store it in the fridge when you drink it every time.
Yeah, correct, yep.
correct, yeah.
You don't want to
need
pull it out
pull
a little bit before. All right.
This is the one I'm looking forward to.
All right, so this is part of the Wagner family. This is Amolo Sauvignon Blanc. This is made by Jenny Wagner. She is a fourth generation winemaker within the Wagner family. That's going to say fourth because her mother's grandparents were vineyard owners and winemakers that we'll actually talk about. As we move on from Pinot Noir, now we're moving south to South America. This is called Red Scooter, and this is a Malbec from Argentina.
Well, this is also from Wagner Wine, so you're very familiar with the ones that we've had, Merlot and also from Cayman. So this is Wagner's. They actually go over to Argentina and they grow the grapes and then they ship them on their little schooner ship. As you can see on the label.
It's got like a little voyage
Yeah,
map and
the
stuff like that.
voyage. So they actually freeze the grapes on the boats and bring them over to California and then bottle and make their wine. So this is actually, this doesn't have a vintage, but it is actually a vintage, but it doesn't say it, right?
Correct.
So,
It's
but it's the 10th year, 10th voyage
yes,
over.
it's the 10th wine they've made. Yeah, and they actually don't pigeonhole themselves to one growing vintage because they know that the vintages could vary year to year. So they actually cross blend vintages a little bit with this. They use that cryo extraction, where they freeze the grapes. And what that does is allow, obviously, for them to transport it all the way back to California. What it does is they can let it ripen to the fullest extent in Argentina before they ship the grapes back. And then when they make the wine and then put it into barrel, you get that larger, bolder flavor. Malbecs can tend to be a little bit more lighter body. This one sees a ton of skin contact, so you get that little heavier, riper. Yeah, it's very dark. When they launch this wine, they're like, oh, they're going outside of California. Well, they understand that the wine world is just more than what they have in California. So they really wanted to play with some different varietals. And Malbec is an opportunity to, again, make a red wine in a different style that they can kind of have fun with, and some wine dinners, and obviously expand their portfolio as well. So.
They're kind of a fun label.
It is, yeah.
And the story behind it and shipping over the grains and.
I can see that this has a very big, what did you call it, lay?
Yeah. So higher alcohol, lower sugar. Yep.
That's just a lot.
Yep.
All 14%.
14.4, yeah. So a little higher alcohol. You see that with some Malbecs again that see this much age, oak too as well. So a little higher alcohol. So Mendoza is at the foothills of the Andes Mountains. So this is again high elevation. So they see a ton of sunlight. It's a very arid area, and what that means is really the only water that these vines see is in the springtime from the snow melt. It's very, very dry there. So again, these roots in these vineyards have to go super deep to find any type of water. And a lot of them are dry farm irrigation or very, very small drip irrigation, just because there's not a lot of water there. So our next one is also from the Wagner family. This is called Walking Fool from Caymus. And this actually says Caymus on the label. It says Caymus Suisun, and Suisun is an area that is east of Napa, kind of back towards, if you're going towards like Sacramento. They bought some property there years ago, and it was great for growing Petite Syrah, Petite Bordeaux, Syrah, some other different blending grapes, if you will. Well, they figured out, hey, this could make some really nice wine on its own. So they started making some wines from just these vineyards. So they actually put Caymus on the label, but put Suisun. They made this wine called Walking Fool. I'll tell you a little bit of a story about the label. So that's actually a picture of Ionis Gloss, which, have you heard of the Bella Gloss wines from the Wagner family? So again, that's going back 4 generations, if you will, or 1800s. The Charles Wagner's mother's family is the Gloss family, and they lived in this area in the in the mid to late 1800s. And Jonas was kind of this happy-go-lucky guy that would bring water down to the family farm, and he was kind of just, and everybody in town's kind of like, what's this fool doing? He's always walking everywhere, and he's always hauling pails of water around. So they kind of called that, they nicknamed him the Walking Fool. So they wanted to make a wine that was paying homage to him. And kind of what what this wine does is kind of, it's a blend of a number of different varietals. Actually, they'll tell you in your tasting notes kind of the different varietals. But one thing about the Wagner family is they don't like to divulge what the exact blend is percentage-wise. They'll give you little hints. It's got some Sin and Petit Syrah, but they're not going to tell you much more than that. They call them proprietary red blends for a reason. They don't like to divulge their secrets.
Are you guys familiar with the conundrum red and white? Like for many, many years, they would never tell what the blend was.
What the grapes were.
What the grapes were. Because what they would do is they'd sit together here, they'd have all the different juices from the different barrels, and they would just start blending and make their wine. And they would never tell anybody what the actual blend was. And it was
Because it also, they can allow to change it from year to year.
I wouldn't tell either.
And they didn't even write any of it down. Well, now it's become super popular and stuff like that. So again, they want to make it more consistent from each wine. So they don't do it like that exactly anymore. But again, they don't divulge their trade secrets, if you will, because their wines are super popular, and they're enjoyed at a lot of tables around this country, as well as a lot of restaurants as well. So this is kind of more like if you were going to have a barbecue outside. I mean, the Zinfandel Petit Syrah, you want some like kind of charred, barbecue-y smoke maybe with this wine. Again, something a little heavier because this wine's got some body to it. It's definitely, I call this, you can feel this wine in the glass, like just even looking at it. That's a bigger one.
That's a good one. Remember how on the wire we were holding?
Right, yeah. Oh, you can't see much through this one.
That's good.
Yeah, it's a very nice, and this is relatively new. This is a 2020. And they do this one vintage, so it's not a cross. This is a 2020 vintage. Now, with Napa, you're not going to see many 2020 vintages because of the fires, but this was obviously far enough away where the reds were not affected, so they were able to make wines that weren't, tainted by smoke or fire or anything like that. So that's kind of a question people are having. Like, oh, are we going to have any wines? Like, yes, you will, but it might not be from some of your favorite vineyards in Napa, because a lot of them kind of more in the central area, just north of Napa, the city, the downtown area, kind of in that, what we call like the middle block, that was the most affected. So we're going to taste one Napa Valley wine, and this is their 2018 vintage. They did not make a 2020. Thoughts, again, on the Walking Fool? We like this one?
I love it.
Perfect.
A lot of
That was
fruit.
a good
A
one.
lot of fruit.
A little easier on me than the one prior.
Yeah.
At
that
least
one.
for non-red drinkers, a little.
So the higher the price, the better.
Well, the
Is this one?
A little Zinfandel.
You have expensive
Oh, okay, I have
So
expensive taste.
so why red blends is why they've become super popular is because they're easier drinking, they're easier pop. There's nothing overpowering in the glass, so they make the blends that way so you can have a more enjoyable drinking experience. So you can be like, I'll have a red wine, but I'll have a red blend, so I'm not like overpowered and I don't want to drink choke it down. You know, it's so dry or
Or need
it's
a
so
steak.
yeah, or need something, you know, food, stuff like that. So that's one.
Oh, this is a good one, right?
I think both of these cabs are exceptional. So they're totally different styles. So we're gonna start. This first one is called Iron and Sand. This is from Paso Robles. Yeah, so Paso Robles, who knows kind of where this area is, kind of north of LA, Santa Barbara, very, very warm. Okay, it's a very warm, growing area. This is called Iron and Sand, and it's actually named after the two hot springs that are in Paso Robles. One's called the Iron Spring, one's called the Sand Spring. Okay, so that's what, and they both kind of converge together near where this wine is made. So Paso Robles is become very popular in the Cabernet world because they're making some extraordinary Cabernets, and a lot of them are 100% Cabernet. Why that's a big deal is because the Cabernet is allowed to ripen at such a rate where they really don't need to blend much into the Bordeaux varietal. So you'll see on this one, it's mostly Cabernet with a little bit. Yeah, so this one, again,
You're getting a little drier,
it's
so
drier.
the
That's good.
non-red drinkers,
I like this
it'll be
one.
a little harder to drink.
This is.
Yeah, so kind of in white too, yeah. Correct. So this is again. So Cabernets have a little bit thicker skin. They're also again a bigger grape. And what they do to kind of get more intense flavor is they let those skins sit on top of the juice after pressing them and then into the fermentation process. So you get those bigger, bolder flavors, and then you get those dryness characteristics in the very edges of your mouth. That's what really makes for a good Cabernet. You want that dry characteristic. That's why, that's why you need to pair it with fattier foods, meat, deli meats, like that.
That is good.
Very.
Now, anybody
So this-
dumping that out, just dump that in.
So this is the 2019 vintage. This got Wine Enthusiast this got really nice press. There's some restaurants that jumped on this early and actually like bought everything it had because they didn't know what to expect this wine. We kind of just made this Paso wine, and then everyone's like, we love it. So it's become more popular. Yeah.
have this?
Yeah.
Christy brought it.
Yeah. One of the restaurants in Detroit, Prime and Proper, they're the ones that kind of were catalyst of bringing this into Michigan, working with the Trincaro family. So, and they're the ones that kind of bought us out of it a couple of years ago. So that's when it's done quite well. For Paso Robles to really start rivaling Napa now. I mean, there's just some wineries down there that are doing some amazing Cabernets, and you're starting to see a lot of the Napa Valley wineries start to make Paso Robles wines because they haven't been affected by the fires. They actually have a little bit more growing area. The land isn't as expensive as it is. Our final wine of the evening is the Nyers Napa Valley Cabernet 2018 vintage. Everyone's probably wondering who's Nyers.
I always better kick out our.
Nyers is named after a gentleman, Bruce Nyers, who Bruce was an importer for Kermit Lynch Imports. Imports a ton of different European wines. He worked for them for 27 years, and his goal was always to open his own winery. He wanted to make wine that he had learned from all these people working in Bordeaux to Burgundy to Sancerre to all over the map. But he really wanted to create a Napa Valley wine that was reminiscent of the old days. So this style of Cabernet is what we call kind of old school Cabernet. It was more designed after the Bordeaux, the white bank Bordeaux in France, or they're more cab driven. So again, this is mostly Cabernet with some of the other Bordeaux varietals, which is Merlot, Petit Verdot, Malbec, and Cab Franc. And so this is again So you just tasted kind of more of a newer style Cabernet. This is kind of throwing it back to a little bit more older style Cabernet within the Napa Valley. So this is more for your filet mignon. This is for more of your more elegant dishes. Because this is not a big, bold, brash Cabernet. It does have some of those characteristics, but it's more of a, in the grand scheme of Napa Valley Cabernets, this is more on the reserved Cabernet. Yeah.
No, I like the other one better.
So you like bigger, newer style Cabernets? Yep. See, I like this one better because the tannins aren't overpowering the flavor in the wine.
This is more like back to the Pinot.
Correct. It's a little bit more reserved. It's a little bit lighter in style. It doesn't have those big bright tannins.
It doesn't have it. But it's good.
All right, it's time to vote. We're gonna go down the line, and you have to pick which wine that you love the most. You can pick a white. You can pick a white and a red. I'll give you that. You can pick a white and a red.
Oh my God.
All right. My first?
Yeah, Christy, you can go.
Well, first, I mean, I'm just a Pinot Noir drinker, so,
Okay.
I mean, flowers definitely was my favorite.
Perfect.
You know, flowers.
Yeah,
Yep.
you know, it doesn't, hey, that's all good.
There we go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love
Myers.
that.
Perfect.
Definitely. The flowers Chardonnay for white
Yeah.
and this one.
And the Cabernet and the Nyers. Awesome.
Yeah.
I like the Apollo.
That was wonderful.
Sauvignon Blanc. Awesome.
Yeah.
Probably the flowers.
The Flowers Pinot Noir. Yeah.
It's a tough choice between the
Yeah.
Nyers Cab and the
It
flowers.
is. It really is.
Yeah, it is. I agree.
It's kind of like what would be my
I
dinner in front of
tasted
me.
this one last, so
Yeah.
I'm thinking this one.
Right?
I love that one. Yeah,
Right?
that was delicious.
It's hard. It's hard to decide.
I'd go with the Moscato and I'd go with that.
The
Cab
iron,
just before this one.
the iron and sand,
Iron
Moscato and the iron and sand.
Nice.
And last but not least,
Well, I've learned a lot about reds.
perfect.
But
I
she's
think
thinking
that-
she needs a lot more to taste.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
The
There we
Pinot
go.
Noirs are definitely good, but the Camus Saison red wine blend, that was
Yeah.
walking good. Yeah, the walking cool. That was very good.
We've tasted with people. They again. It's one of those wines. You're like, oh, I can have another glass.
Yeah.
I can have
Yeah.
another glass of it. And that's kind of what the appeal of the red blend is. It's kind of the more sessionable red versus some of the other wines. Well, again, thank you so much for attending tonight. I hope everyone enjoys their tasting kits and enjoys listening to this great panel that we had to debate and taste some of these wines. No worries. Thank you for having me. So, cheers and salute. Salute. Oh, you need to love it. You can't cheers an empty glass. I gotta have a little. Absolutely. Salute to everyone.
Thank you.